"We're renovating your master bedroom before moving in," said my brother's wife. He nodded like it was already decided. "Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about." My name is Emily Carter. I'm in my mid-30s, and after years of scraping, saving, and working double shifts, I finally bought my dream home. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. Every brick, every corner, paid for with my own sweat. After a tough divorce, this house felt like a fresh start. The master bedroom was my favorite part. Big windows, warm sunlight in the mornings, and space that finally felt safe. I thought my brother Daniel and his wife Melissa were stopping by just to help me unpack, maybe share some pizza, and celebrate. Instead, Melissa walked through my door with entitlement dripping from her words, and Daniel stood behind her. At first, I thought it was a bad joke. I laughed, waiting for Melissa to crack a smile. But she didn't. She ran her hands over the walls like she owned the place, saying how their colors would brighten the room, and how they'd need to bring in new furniture soon. My stomach dropped. I asked what she meant by moving in. That's when Daniel admitted they'd hit money trouble, and since I had a house too big for one person, they planned to live with me, taking the master bedroom. I reminded them this was my home, my space. Melissa rolled her eyes, saying, "Family helps family. You don't need all this room." Daniel didn't defend me. He just stood there, avoiding eye contact, as if I was the unreasonable one. The same brother I had supported through college, the same one I lent money to when he couldn't pay rent, was ready to push me out of my own bedroom. The following days were worse. I caught Melissa sneaking in with measuring tape, marking the walls, even flipping through furniture catalogs at my kitchen table. Daniel pretended nothing was happening, acting like it was already settled. Each time I protested, Melissa dismissed me with a smirk. The betrayal stung more than I can describe. Finally, one evening, I came home to find Melissa sketching out their plans for my... Something inside me snapped. I told them to get out, that I wasn't giving up my house, or my bedroom, to anyone. Daniel's face hardened. He said I was selfish, and Melissa called me heartless. He left me with the words, "Don't expect family to stand by you when you're alone again." That night I cried. Not because I doubted my choice, but because I realized I'd lost my brother. Still, I changed the locks, drew a line, and refused to let them manipulate me again. Months later, I heard they'd burned through what little they had and were staying in motels. I felt sad, but I didn't open my door. I worked too hard for this home. I earned my master bedroom, and no one was going to take it from me. Buying that house was the hardest thing I ever did, but also the thing I'm proudest of. For years I skipped vacations, lived in tiny apartments, and worked long hours just to save enough. Signing the papers felt unreal. Walking through the front door with my own keys in hand, I can't even explain the feeling. Every corner carried the weight of my effort. The hardwood floors, the quiet neighborhood, even the smell of fresh paint. It all whispered that this was mine. The room that mattered most to me was the master. It wasn't just big, it felt like a sanctuary. Sunlight poured through wide windows each morning, casting a soft glow across the wall. The attached bathroom had a deep tub, something I always dreamed about during years of cramped showers. After my marriage ended, I promised myself I'd build a space where I could breathe again, where I could close the door and feel at peace. That room became more than four walls. It was proof I had survived, that I had rebuilt. When Daniel and Melissa pulled into the driveway, I was excited at first. I thought they'd be happy for me, maybe bring wine, maybe say how proud they were. Instead, the moment they stepped inside, their eyes scanned the place like inspectors. Melissa didn't smile. She ran her fingers over the counters, opened cabinets, peeked into closets, as if checking what she'd be working with. Daniel trailed behind her, silent but strangely approving, like this wasn't my house at all, but some joint project they were already part of. They walked into the master bedroom, and Melissa's whole expression changed. She lingered, looking around slowly, almost possessively. She sat on the edge of my bed without asking, testing the mattress, then stood by the window as though admiring her new view. Daniel gave a short nod, the kind of nod that made my stomach tighten. It wasn't admiration, it was assessment, like they were imagining where their things would go. The way they carried themselves, the way they looked around, it felt less like guests visiting and more like owners arriving. In that moment, I realized something was off. Instead of congratulating me, instead of sharing in the pride I had fought so hard for, they acted like I was just keeping the place warm until they were ready to move in. The joy I expected from showing my brother my dream home twisted into unease. The sanctuary I had created suddenly felt invaded. Melissa was standing near the window when she let it slip. With a casual smile, she said, "This is our room." The words landed heavy, though her tone made it sound as ordinary as pointing out the color of the curtain. I blinked, sure I had misheard, but Daniel didn't correct her. He stood there with his hands shoved into his pockets, eyes fixed on the floor, like a kid caught doing something wrong. His silence spoke louder than any explanation could. I forced a laugh, brushing it off as a strange joke. "Our room? You mean my room?" I said, trying to keep the mood light. Melissa didn't laugh back. Instead, she tilted her head, the way someone does when they think you're being deliberately difficult. "No," she said firmly, "we'll redo this space. Lighter colors, new furniture, our style. You'll see. It'll feel right once we move in." The air shifted then. I felt it deep in my chest, that slow tightening that comes when something isn't safe anymore. My skin prickled, and for the first time since I bought the house, the room didn't feel like mine. The way Melissa spoke, confident, unquestioning, told me this wasn't a slip of the tongue. She believed it. Daniel's refusal to meet my eyes, the way his jaw clenched, told me he believed it too. I stood there frozen, smiling faintly, though my pulse was racing. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was out of line, but the words stuck. I could feel a chill crawling up my spine, settling into my stomach, warning me that whatever was happening here, it wasn't going to stop with one comment. It was just the beginning. It didn't take long for the truth to slip out. Melissa was in the kitchen flipping through a stack of mail she shouldn't have touched when I overheard her grumble about bills piling up. I asked what she meant, and Daniel finally admitted it. They were drowning, credit cards maxed, rent overdue, and their landlord had already sent warnings. They didn't just want to stay a few nights, they were planning on moving in. I stared at them, waiting for someone to laugh, to tell me I was misunderstanding. But Melissa just leaned back against the counter, arms folded, and said it plain. "We'll take the master. You'll be fine in the guest room. It's not like you need all that space." Her tone was matter of fact, as though the decision had already been signed off. My brother didn't object. He stood there, shifting from foot to foot, refusing to look at me. It was clear this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment idea. They'd talked about it, agreed on it, maybe even rehearsed how they'd present it. The betrayal hit harder than I expected. I had spent years scraping together every penny, cutting corners, staying up late at jobs I hated just to have this place. And now, after all that, Daniel was ready to hand my sanctuary to his wife as though it cost him nothing. I asked if they realized what they were saying. Daniel muttered something about families sticking together, how I should be glad to help them out. But the way he said it felt like a command, not a request. My chest ached. This was the same brother I once bailed out when he couldn't pay tuition, the same one I'd defended when no one else believed in him. Now he was choosing silence, letting Melissa draw the lines, and those lines cut me out of my own home. The thought of being shoved into the cramped guest room while they stretched out in the space I had fought so hard for was unbearable. The walls I had painted with hope, the windows I loved waking up to, all of it reduced to a prize they thought they could claim. I didn't know if I was angrier at Melissa's arrogance or at Daniel's cowardice, but the mix of the two hollowed me out. For the first time since I held my new keys, I felt powerless inside my own house. I couldn't hold back any longer. Standing in the doorway of the master, I raised my voice, steady but sharp. "This is my house, my room. You don't get to decide otherwise." My hands were shaking, though I forced myself to keep eye contact. Melissa didn't even flinch. She crossed her arms, lips curling into a smirk. "Family helps family," she shot back, her voice coated with disdain. "You don't need all this space to yourself. It's wasteful. We're offering to make use of it." Her words stung, not because they were true, but because of how confidently she said them, as if my years of sacrifice meant nothing compared to her idea of what was fair. I turned to Daniel, waiting, praying, for him to step in, to remind her this was my home. Instead, he sighed, staring at the floor. "You're being selfish, Em," he muttered, almost under his breath, but loud enough to slice through me. That single word cut deeper than anything Melissa had thrown at me. Selfish. From the brother I'd stayed up nights tutoring in high school, so he wouldn't fail. From the man whose tuition I chipped in for when mom and dad couldn't. From the same person I'd loaned money to when he nearly got evicted. And here he was, standing in the middle of my hard-won refuge, accusing me of greed for not handing it over. The air felt heavy, pressing down on me. My chest ached as though something inside was breaking. I looked at Daniel and barely recognized him. His silence, his refusal to meet my eyes, his siding with her. It felt like I'd lost him long before this fight even began. Melissa kept talking, going on about paint colors and furniture like she had already won, but I couldn't focus on her words anymore. All I could hear was Daniel's voice echoing in my head, calling me selfish in a place that only existed because I had fought for myself when no one else did. My brother, the one person I thought would understand, had chosen her vision of comfort over my right to belong in my own home. The days that followed felt like walking on broken glass. Every time I entered a room, the air was thick with unspoken words. Meals were quiet, footsteps heavy, doors closing harder than they needed to. I tried to go about my routines, but I could feel them circling, waiting, scheming. One afternoon, I came home earlier than expected. The sound of drawers opening upstairs drew me toward the master. Pushing the door open, I froze. Melissa was standing by the closet with swatches spread across her arm, fabric samples in pale blues and grays. On the floor, a binder lay open, pages filled with magazine clippings of beds, dressers, rugs. A tape measure stretched across the wall. She didn't even look embarrassed when I caught her. "Oh, just checking dimensions," she said breezily, as though she had every right to be there. Her eyes flicked to mine, cool and dismissive, before she bent down to jot a note. My skin crawled. That night I confronted Daniel, hoping for outrage, or at least shame. He barely reacted. "She's just planning ahead," he said with a shrug, like it was the most natural thing in the world. No apology. No acknowledgement that boundaries had been crossed. His calmness scared me more than Melissa's boldness. Each day after, I noticed new signs. Post-it notes with scribbles left on the dresser. Melissa flipping through catalogs at the dining table. Quiet conversations that ended the moment I walked in. They were nesting in a space that wasn't theirs, weaving their presence into walls I had painted, floors I had chosen. The realization settled slowly, like cold water dripping into my bones. They weren't waiting for permission. In their minds, this was already decided. I wasn't the owner anymore. I was an obstacle. And the brother I once trusted had slipped to her side without a word, letting her lead the invasion while he hid behind silence. I walked into the kitchen late one evening, tired from work, only to stop dead in my tracks. Melissa sat at the dining table with papers spread everywhere. She had drawn layouts, arrows pointing to where a dresser should sit, scribbles labeling their bed and our closet. She was designing a future in my house, as if I didn't exist. My voice came out sharper than I expected. "What do you think you're doing?" The pen froze in her hand, but she didn't look startled, only annoyed at being interrupted. "Just planning," she said coolly. "It'll be easier once we start moving things around." Something inside me snapped. All the silent stares, the measuring tape, the catalogs, Daniel's cowardly shrugs, it all boiled over. I slammed my palm against the table, scattering her papers. "Enough. Get out. Both of you. This is my home, and I'm done playing along with your delusions." Melissa's eyes widened, then narrowed into a glare. She started to argue, but Daniel stepped forward. For the first time, he spoke with real heat, not to defend me, but to wound me. "Don't expect family to stand by you when you're alone again." His words cut like glass, cruel and deliberate. My throat tightened, but I held my ground. "If this is what family means to you, I don't need it," I said, voice shaking but firm. The room pulsed with tension, chairs scraping against the floor as they gathered their things. The slam of the front door echoed long after they were gone. That night, the weight of everything crashed down. I curled on my bed, tears soaking into the pillow. Losing Daniel hurt more than Melissa's schemes ever could. Memories of helping him through school, of laughing together as kids, of being the one person he could rely on, all of it twisted into something bitter. But as the hours dragged by, sorrow hardened into resolve. Their betrayal had stripped me raw, but it also lit a fire. I would not be pushed out of my own life. I wiped my face, staring at the ceiling, and whispered to myself that no one would take from me what I had built. Not again. Not ever. The morning after they left, I woke up with swollen eyes and a pounding head, but also with clarity. I wasn't going to spend another minute drowning in pity. If they wanted to take what was mine, then I needed to make it impossible. The first step was practical. I called a locksmith and had every entry rekeyed before lunchtime. Watching the old locks fall into the trash gave me a strange satisfaction, as if I was cutting off their grip on my home one bolt at a time. Next, I made an appointment with a lawyer. I explained everything, how they were circling like vultures, how they acted as if ownership had shifted. Within days, paperwork was filed ensuring no one could try to stake a claim. It was official. This house belonged to me alone, beyond question. But shutting them out physically and legally wasn't enough. They had taken something deeper, and I needed to strike back in a way that would sting. That's when I thought of Melissa's family, the ones she hadn't spoken to in years, the ones she always trashed whenever her name came up. I reached out, invited them for a housewarming. They were delighted to come, and I made sure word spread quickly enough that Melissa would hear. The idea of her despised relatives filling the rooms she wanted to control made my lips curl into a smile. At the same time, I started untangling myself from Daniel's life. For years I had been his safety net, covering tuition shortfalls, bailing him out of overdue bills, spotting him cash whenever he came up short. I stopped cold. No more quiet transfers, no more favors. Calls asking for help went unanswered. Texts requesting money sat unopened. Cutting that tie hurt, but each time I resisted, I felt stronger, like I was reclaiming pieces of myself they had chipped away. Revenge wasn't about shouting or slamming doors anymore. It was about control. And slowly, piece by piece, I was taking it back. It didn't take long before they came back, standing on my porch as if nothing had happened. I opened the door just enough to block their way inside. Daniel started first, his voice soft, almost rehearsed. He spoke about family bonds, about loyalty, about how they were only asking for a little support during a rough patch. He tried to paint it as if my refusal was heartless, as if I had forgotten where we came from. Melissa, of course, wasn't nearly as polished. Her words dripped with accusation, each one sharper than the last. "After everything I've done for your brother, you owe us this," she shouted, her face twisted with rage. "If it weren't for me, he'd still be a nobody. The least you could do is give us what we deserve." I stood still, arms crossed, my voice steady. What I owed, I already gave. I carried him when he couldn't carry himself. I gave and gave until there was nothing left. What's mine now, you'll never take. Silence hung for a moment. Daniel's eyes flickered with something, shame, maybe regret, but he didn't speak up for me. He shifted closer to her, as if that was where he belonged now, even while the weight of my words settled between us. Melissa let out a bitter laugh, muttering insults as she grabbed his arm. Her anger filled the doorway, but I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I simply waited until they turned to leave. Daniel glanced back once, his face tight, conflicted, but when Melissa tugged, he went with her. Watching them walk away, I felt a strange mix, sadness for the brother I had lost, and relief that I had finally closed the door for good. Months passed in quiet rhythm. I poured my energy into the house, filling it with the small comforts I had always dreamed of: fresh curtains, shelves stacked with books, flowers on the windowsill. Life was calmer, lighter, though sometimes I caught myself wondering where Daniel had gone, whether he ever thought about what he'd thrown away. The answer came one evening through a phone call from my cousin. Her voice was hushed, almost hesitant, before she finally told me. Daniel and Melissa were drifting between cheap motels, nearly out of cash, sometimes even sleeping in their car. Whatever money they had left after leaving me was long gone. My cousin had seen them herself, worn down, arguing in the parking lot of a grocery store. I sat on the edge of my bed, letting the news sink in. A knot of sadness pulled at me. He was still my brother, after all. I remembered his laughter when we were children, the nights I had helped him through schoolwork, the years I had tried to lift him up. Part of me grieved for that version of him, the one I'd lost. But alongside the sorrow came something steadier, heavier: justice. I had opened my hands to help them countless times, and instead of gratitude, they tried to strip me of everything I'd worked for. Their downfall wasn't mine to fix. They had chosen this path, and now they were living the cost of it. I didn't reach out. I didn't offer money, a place to stay, or even a word of comfort. Closing that door once had been painful. Reopening it would only invite the same betrayal back into my life. That night, I stood in the master bedroom. The golden light of sunset spilled across the floor, the walls glowing warm. I traced the outline of the window with my eyes, the very spot where Melissa once declared it hers. It wasn't hers. It never would be. This space, this peace, belonged to me alone. For the first time in a long while, I felt stillness. No tension, no fear of losing what I had fought so hard to build. Just quiet certainty. They had tried to take it, and I had won. Do you think I made the right choice by shutting them out, or should I have given them another chance? Let me know in the comments. I'd love your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.